The silence of the country was louder than the city ever was. Back in the apartment, there was always the rhythmic thrum of traffic or a neighbor's muffled TV. Here in this little house on the edge of a pine forest, the only sound was the blowing through the branches and the settling of old floorboards. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by half-taped boxes and the smell of lemon floor wax. My hands were sore, but it was a good kind of hurt. This was the fresh start I'd promised myself. Roy and I had sat on his sofa 2 weeks ago, Cody between us, and agreed that this was for the best. It's a good school district, Roy, I had said, trying to convince myself as much as him. I know, Jan. It's a lot of driving for the handoffs, he replied, though he wasn't angry. We were past anger. We were just two people who had grown up too fast, lost too much, and eventually looked at each other and saw only the ghosts of children we didn't get to keep. A soft knock at the back door made me jump. Through the glass stood a woman who looked like she'd been plucked from a vintage postcard. She wore a brown dress and held a tinfoil-covered plate. Her hair was a cloud of spun silver. "I saw the moving truck," she said as I opened the door. Her voice was friendly. "I'm Miss Valera, from just over the hill. I thought you might be too tired to think about dinner." "Oh, thank you. I'm Janice." I took the plate. It was heavy and warm. "I'm a bit of a mess right now." "Moving is a heavy soul work, Janice," Miss Valera said, her eyes trailing over the empty kitchen. They weren't judging. They were searching. "You have a little one, don't you?" I saw the booster seat in the car. "Yes, Cody. He's 5. He's with his father while I get things settled." Miss Valera tilted her head. "Brave thing. A mother starting over on her own. It's a lonely path, but sometimes the Lord clears the road so we can find our real purpose." She didn't leave right away. She lingered, asking about my job at the clinic and how I liked the quiet. I found myself telling her things I hadn't even told my sisters. About the divorce, the way the house felt too big without Cody's toys underfoot, and the lingering ache of the 3 pregnancies that never made it to term. She didn't flinch. She just nodded, her hand resting briefly on my arm. "You've carried so much, Janice. You're such a wonderful person. Anyone can see that. You're a light that's been under a bushel for too long." By the time she left, I felt a strange sense of relief, like I had let go of a load that I hadn't noticed I'd been carrying. "We have a service this Sunday," Miss Valera said, pausing at the porch steps. "At the chapel in the woods. It's not like those big city cathedrals. It's old and small, but we're just like a big family there. We'd love to have some new members join." I watched her turn and start to walk up the driveway. I looked down at the plate that she had brought. It was a simple pot roast, but as I took a bite, I realized I hadn't felt this welcome in years. The dress was a soft sage green, something I hadn't worn since before the final year with Roy. It felt a little tight around the ribs, or maybe that was just my nerves. I hadn't stepped foot in a church in nearly a decade, not since my mother's funeral, but Miss Valera's invitation felt different. It felt like a neighborly hand reaching out in the dark. I checked the time. Cody would be finishing breakfast with Roy right about now. I thought about video calling, but I didn't want to explain why I was so dressed up. Roy would be supportive, but he'd have that concerned tilt to his head, wondering if I was joining a bowling league or a prayer circle to hide from the silence of a new house. Drive to the chapel was longer than I expected. Paved road turned into gravel, then into a narrow dirt track lined with ancient, gnarled oaks that seemed to lace their fingers together over the car. Up ahead, there was a clearing. The chapel wasn't a steeple and bell affair. It was a low, sturdy building made of river stone and dark timber, tucked into the elbow of a creek. It looked like it had grown out of the earth itself. There were about a dozen cars parked neatly in the grass, mostly older models, polished until they gleamed. As soon as I opened my car door, the hum of singing reached me. It wasn't a hymn I recognized. It was wordless, deep resonant harmony that made the air feel heavy. Miss Valera was waiting by the heavy oak doors. She looked radiant in a dark orange skirt and jacket set. "Janice," she breathed, taking both of my hands in hers. Her palms were dry and papery. "I'm so glad you came. I told them you'd come." "I hope I'm not late," I said, feeling suddenly shy. "You're exactly when you're meant to be." She led me inside. The interior smelled of beeswax and something sharper, like crushed pine needles. There were no padded pews, just hand-carved benches arranged in neat rows. As we entered, the singing suddenly stopped. Every face turned towards me. At first it felt intimidating, but their expressions were filled with such genuine, overwhelming warmth that I felt myself smiling back. They didn't just look at me, they beamed. A tall man with silver hair and hands that looked like they had spent a lifetime in a wood shop stepped forward. "Is this her, Valera?" he asked, his voice a rich baritone. "This is Janice," she said, her voice trembling with what sounded like pride. "Janice, this is Silas, and that's Pastor Nathan." She gestured to a man wearing a white robe. "Welcome home, Janice," Pastor Nathan said. He reached out and touched my forehead with a thumb that felt like it had oil on it. "We've been praying for a mother's heart to join us. We've heard so much about you and about your boy." "You have?" I asked, a small flicker of confusion crossing my mind. I'd only met Miss Valera once. "A town this small, good news travels like wildfire," Silas said with a chuckle, sensing my hesitation. He gestured towards the benches. "Come, sit. We were just discussing the beauty of heaven and how we are all welcome in the kingdom." As I took my seat between two older women who immediately reached out to pat my hands, I felt a strange, dizzying rush of belonging. One of the women leaned in, her eyes watering with emotion. "Where has Valera been hiding you?" she whispered. "You're just as wonderful as she said. Such a pure, sweet soul." I leaned back into the hard wood of the bench, letting their compliments wash over me. For the first time since the divorce, maybe the first time since the losses, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt hopeful. After that, my social calendar was no longer empty. In the city, I'd been lucky to get a "How's it going?" text from a neighbor. Here, my porch was a revolving door of kindness. Every Tuesday, Silas came by to check my oil or tighten a loose railing. He never asked for money. "Family doesn't invoice family, Janice," he'd say, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that smelt like the same sweet incense from the chapel. I was sitting on the porch with Miss Valera on a humid afternoon, sipping iced tea. Cody was coming up for a long weekend in a few days, and I was vibrating with excitement. "Got his favorite dinosaur sheets all ready," I told her, smiling at the empty tire swing Silas had hung up from the oak tree. "He's a very lucky boy," Miss Valera said. She reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear, a gesture that felt a little too intimate, but I let it slide. To have a mother so devoted, most women these days, well, they're selfish. They let the fathers take too much time. They don't realize that a son's spirit is tied only to the woman who brought him through the veil. I felt a small prickle of discomfort. "Roy's a good dad, Miss Valera. We're lucky we can make it work." The smile on her face didn't falter, but her eyes went cold for a split second. "Men are protectors of the hearth, Janice. They are not keepers of the soul. We all know that women are the true parents, better parents. It's strange to us seeing him go back and forth, like he's being torn in half." I laughed nervously. "It's just modern life, I guess." "Not for us," she whispered. There was no more mention of it after that. A few days later, after Cody arrived, I took him to the Saturday social at the chapel. I wanted him to see all of the people who had been so good to me. The moment we stepped out of the car, it was like a flock of hens. "Oh, look at him," chirped Miss Gable, a woman who had brought me 3 casseroles in 3 weeks. She knelt in the dirt, ignoring her pristine skirt. "Look at those eyes. He has the look, doesn't he, Midge?" Silas approached, his shadow falling over Cody. My son, usually a social butterfly, tucked himself behind my leg. "Don't be shy, little king," Silas said, his voice booming. "I'm your Uncle Silas, and this is your aunties, Miss Gable and Miss Shaw. You've got dozens of us. We're so happy you're here." "He's just tired from the drive," I said, reaching down to squeeze Cody's hand. "He's not tired," Silas said, looking at me with startling intensity. "He's recognizing the weight. He knows who he is." I walked away from that interaction feeling a bit dazed. By the end of the evening, every person there had insisted Cody call them auntie or uncle. It was sweet, in a way. I'd wanted a village to help me raise him, and here it was, delivered on a silver platter. That night, as I tucked Cody into his dinosaur sheets, he looked up at me with wide, confused eyes. "Mommy?" "Yeah, Bug?" "Why did that man call me a king?" "He was just being silly," I said, kissing him on the forehead. "He's just a nice neighbor." "I don't like his smell," Cody whispered, turning towards the wall. "He smells like old fruit." I sat in the dim living room for a long time after that, watching the woods. For the first time, silence didn't feel as peaceful. By the time the midsummer heat hit its peak, I had fallen into a comfortable rhythm. I was working at the clinic, going to church, and the handoffs with Roy were every other week. The invitation for the Ascension celebration came on a Thursday, delivered by Miss Valera with 2 gifts, 2 sets of clothes. White for the mother and white for the son, Miss Valera whispered, smoothing the linen dress across my bed. It was beautiful. Miss Valera, I don't know, I said, looking at the small tunic for Cody. It starts at 9. He's usually out by 8. I don't want him to get too cranky. It's just one night, like fireworks on the 4th of July, a celebration of the light. Would you deny him this wonder for an hour of sleep? I looked at the white linen. Okay, one night, I conceded. The evening of the celebration was oppressive. The air was thick enough to swallow, and the cicadas were screaming in the trees. I dressed Cody in the tunic. He looked like a little angel, though he kept tugging at the collar. It's itchy, Mommy. It's just for a little while, Bug. We're going to see a surprise. When we arrived at the chapel, the parking lot was empty. Everyone was already out behind the building. We walked the path that led around to the back. As we broke into the clearing, I stopped short. They were all there, 30 people, all in white, standing in a perfect, silent circle around the old iron brazier. They weren't talking. They weren't laughing. They were just waiting. There she is, Silas said. He stepped out from the circle. He wore a long robe that went past his feet. The mother of the new dawn and the Prince of Peace. He didn't ruffle Cody's hair this time. He bowed. Then, one by one, the rest of the congregation bowed. The sight of 30 adults kneeling before my 5-year-old sent a cold spike of pure, unadulterated dread down my spine. Okay, I laughed, the sound brittle and thin. This is a bit much, guys. We're just here for the celebration. Oh, Janice, Miss Valera said, appearing behind us. She placed her hands on my shoulders. Her grip was like iron. Fireworks are inside you. We're just going to help you let them out. The circle began to move, closing in. The humming started, that low, vibrating chord I'd heard on my first day. Mommy, I want to go, Cody whispered, his hand crushing mine. We're leaving, I said loudly, trying to turn. But Pastor Nathan was in front of me now. He held a small silver bowl. A sweet, rotting fruit smell was coming from the liquid inside of it. The world is ending tonight, Janice, Pastor Nathan said, his eyes wide and glazed with a terrifying joy. Fires are starting. The judgment is coming. But not for us. We found the mother. We found the king. Once the vessels are broken, We all go together. No more heartache or pain. He dipped his thumb into the bowl and reached for Cody's forehead. "Don't touch him," I screamed, pulling Cody back. The humming stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Miss Valera leaned into my ear, her breath hot. "Don't be selfish, Janice," she hissed. "You were chosen. You brought the Messiah into our woods. Now give him back to the sky." Silas reached into his robe and pulled out a thin, curved blade that glimmered in the moonlight. He looked like a butcher who believed he was an artist. "Set them free," the congregation whispered in unison. "Set us all free." "Move," I growled. Silas didn't move. He stepped closer. Curved blade held flat against his palm like an offering. "Flesh is just a veil, Janice. Why do you cling to a veil that has caused you nothing but sorrow?" "Mommy!" Cody's voice broke into a terrified wail. Sound snapped something inside of me. A polite, soft-spoken woman who didn't want to make a scene died right there in the dirt. As Silas reached for Cody, I lunged. I drove my forehead into his nose with every ounce of momentum I had. I heard the sickening crunch, cartilage, and Silas fell back, howling as blood splattered his white robes. "Run, Cody! To the car!" I didn't wait to see if he moved. I grabbed a heavy glass hurricane lamp from a nearby decorative table and hurled it against the nearest group of women. It shattered, the candle inside catching the dry hemlock needles on the forest floor. A small line of fire erupted, flickering orange against their white skirts. The aunties screamed, drawing back from the heat. That was my gap. I scooped Cody up, his 40 pounds feeling like nothing under the rush of a massive shot of adrenaline. I sprinted in the direction of the car. "Get them!" Miss Valera's voice shrieked behind us. "Don't let the king escape his glory!" I could hear them running behind us as I got closer to the car. "Keys? Keys? The keys!" I chanted under my breath. I realized that I had dropped my bag in all the commotion. My heart plummeted. "Mommy, they're coming!" Cody cried, looking over my shoulder. I skidded to a halt near the edge of the creek. The water was high from the summer rains, rushing dark and cold. Across the water, the gravel road led back towards the main highway, back towards the world that still made sense. I headed for the water. "Hold your breath, Bug," I whispered. Plunged into the creek, just as the first of the white-robed figures burst through the trees. I felt a hand grab at my ankle. I kicked back blindly, my heel connecting with something soft. And then the current took us. The water was freezing, sucking the air out of my lungs, but it was fast. We tumbled over the rocks, the sounds of the colts chanting fading into the roar of the water. I fought to keep Cody's head up, my fingers bruising his ribs as I held him tight. We washed up about 100 yards downstream, shivering and gasping on the muddy bank. I didn't stop to rest. I dragged Cody into the deep brush, crouching low as the beams of flashlights began to sweep the woods above us. My wrist lit up. I still had on my smartwatch. I didn't call the police. In a town this small, I didn't know who was in that circle and who wasn't. I called Roy. Janice? 11 o'clock. Is everything... Roy! I choked out, my voice a jagged whisper. Get the car. Drive towards the old creek bridge on Route 4. Don't stop for anyone. Don't turn on your interior lights. Just come. Please, Roy. They think Cody is a king. They tried to take him and... I'm coming, Roy said. No questions, no hesitation. I sat there in the mud, clutching my son, watching the shadows move through the trees around us. I realized then that the silence of the country wasn't a peaceful thing. It was just a place where no one could hear you yell. The city felt louder than I remembered, but for the first time in my life, I welcomed the noise. I welcomed the sirens, the shouting neighbors, and the screech of the bus brakes at the corner. Every sound was a reminder that I was surrounded by strangers who didn't care who I was. To them, I wasn't a vessel, and Cody wasn't a king. We were just two people in a sea of millions. We moved back into the apartment 3 blocks away from Roy's. Custody handoffs happened in a brightly lit parking lot of a 24-hour grocery store. We didn't talk about that night. We just focused on the logistics of being a family. I thought the fear would fade once the bruises did. I thought the distance would be enough. It was a Friday evening, exactly 3 months after the night at the creek. I was putting Cody to bed, smoothing his dinosaur sheets, when he stopped me. He reached up and touched a lock of my hair, his brow furrowed. Mommy? Yeah, Bug. Saw Auntie Valera today. The air left the room. My heart skipped a beat. Kept my voice flat, a skill I'd spent 90 days perfecting. No, you didn't, honey. We're far away from that town, remember? He was at the park, he said, his voice small and certain. Behind the big slide. She didn't say anything. She just did this. He raised his hand and pressed his thumb against the center of his forehead, exactly where Pastor Nathan had tried to mark him that night. She smiled at me, Mommy. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with the lights off, clutching a kitchen knife and staring at the front door. Every time a floorboard creaked or the wind rattled the window pane, I didn't hear the city anymore. I heard the low, vibrating hum of 30 voices. I looked out at the streetlights, realizing that in a world of billions, it only takes one person to decide that you're a miracle. And miracles, as that church taught me, don't belong to the living. They belong to the light.